What's up, y'all? I'm back out here on the range on another cold sunny day. 16 degrees when I first got out here just a little bit ago. Supposed to get up into the 30s today, but it's also supposed to get a lot cloudier and the wind's definitely going to be picking up. Next couple of days though is going to be even windier, so I'm going to make the most of it and get some jelly testing done while I'm out here, and we're going to start things off with something a little on the lighter side. So the jelly contraptions out here toughing out this cold weather with the chronos and 2 fresh blocks of gel. No tests at all done in these yet, so we'll get a nice clear picture of what's happening. Of course, I've got the heavy clothing barrier on it as always, with the layer of denim, fleece, and 2 layers of cotton t-shirt. And what we're checking out here today is a revisit of something I tested a couple years ago now, before I started using the clothing and some of the other fancy stuff I got going on now. It's the Critical Defense Lite. I've got it in 9mm and 38 special here. Now, like I mentioned, I tested this in the past and it done pretty well in just bare gel through both of these, so really curious to see what this does through the cloth. Now, the regular version out here, I just brought this to show y'all the difference in the numbers. I'm not retesting this out here. I've recently retested the 9 and maybe even the 38 special, so we're just focusing on the light stuff here today. So we got the 9mm version here, the 100 grain FTX versus the 115 in the standard stuff. Velocity on this is saying 1125, whereas the 115 is saying 1135. So even with the heavier projectile in this case with the 9mm, it's still claiming faster velocity on the box. Projectile there you can see. Now this one is not nickel plated, but just basically the same as the standard, except for the insert is pink there instead of red, as you can see. And then for the 38 special, we got a 90 grain in the light versus the 110 in the standard, and velocities would make more sense as far as weight with this 38 special. You got 1200 on the light versus 1010 on the heavier standard. And here's your cartridge on the 38 special. Notice this one's nickel plated, got the pink insert. I got these right around the same time, but it was during that transition where they used the whole supply shortage thing to get away from nickel plating their cases. And as far as what I'm running these out of, I figured it'd be fitting, since these are lighter loads, supposed to be less recoil, so on and so forth. Use the shorter barrels again. So I've got, for the 38 special, we've got my 2-inch Taurus 856, and then for the 9mm, I've got my Canik Mete MC9. I believe this thing is technically a 3.18, but we'll call it a 3.2-inch barrel for the purposes of this test. So it ought to be pretty interesting to see how these things handle the cloth. Let's get it set up and let's see what they do. All right, y'all, let's see how fast these little pinkies are moving. I'm gonna do a 5-round average, starting with this 38 special first. Those of y'all not familiar with my testing, like I always mention about this lab radar, you're gonna see multiple velocity numbers. Your large number is gonna be from your muzzle, and then the 5 additional across the bottom. One of them set for 3 yards, which is roughly where the gel here is at 10 feet. And then you've got 10, 15, 25, and 50. So let's see what this does. Remember, this on the box was saying 1200 out of this. I don't expect to see it out of this 2-inch. I don't remember if we did last time. It's been so long and I didn't look back at it. My hands are freezing cold out here, y'all, but I don't want to use gloves so I can kind of get a feel of this. Ooh, very light, very, very light. 884, very light recoil. 953, 949. 887 and 932, very, very light recoiling. The worst part of being out here in the cold is your hands freezing. I've got some gloves that I'm gonna use for the rest of the day probably, but again, it's hard to get a feel for anything out here using gloves. So let's check out what this average is. All right, so our 5-round average there was 921 feet per second, so a far cry from that 1200. Again, I didn't expect to see it from the 2-inch. We had an extreme spread of 69 and a standard deviation of 33.3, so 921, it's a very light projectile, so it may still be all right going through that cloth. Let's reset it and see what the 9mm does. All right, let's see what this 9mm does, y'all. Remember, the box on this is saying 1125, I believe it was. Again, I don't expect to see that, but let's see what we get here. 1105, 1109, 1108, 1128, and 1101, so it was all over that 1125, and at least one of them went over it, so not too bad, and it seemed a lot more consistent from this instead of that revolver. Let's check out that info. All right, we were right there at that 1125 that they were claiming. We had 1110 feet per second. We had a extreme spread of 27 and a standard deviation of 10.3, so 1110, I expect this is probably going to do pretty good in the gel just based on the lightweight of it. 1110 on this one, and if you remember on that 38 special, it was 921, so you talking about, what's that, 189 feet per second faster from that 9mm. Now granted, it is a little bit longer barrel, but it's also a heavier projectile, so 9mm definitely got the edge with this one so far. I'm hoping they both do pretty well in the gel though. Let's get this stuff set up, and y'all know what time it is. All right, y'all, it's pretty in pink jelly time. I'm gonna put one of each into the gel, starting with this 38 special first. I'm a little bit worried about this one. If it doesn't expand, hopefully it doesn't have enough energy to go into the second block and mess that one up, but hopefully it'll expand. I don't really know. I'm worried about this one. All right, that was a perfect round right there. Let me go see what it did. All right, y'all, that's pretty much what I was afraid we was going to get down there. Absolutely zero expansion. Luckily, though, it didn't have the energy to take it into that second block and mess it up. So let's see what this 9mm does. If I'm guessing on this one, I think it might do what it needs to do to get expanded. So I think it's moving just fast enough. All right, that should have been right up under that other one. Let's go see what we got. All right, let's check out what we got down here, y'all. Mixed bag on this one for sure. We got the 38 special on the top, the 9mm on the bottom. Now, both of them look really, really nice here in the gel, just as far as disruption, but the 38 special here, all of that's tumbling, no doubt about it. After the tumbling, it carries on through here. You can see the projectile stop there, just barely touching the face of that second block, so a full 16 inches, and the projectile's facing up, so you know it did some tumbling, and absolutely no kind of expansion at all out of that one. And then the 9mm down here on the bottom doesn't look nearly as impressive as far as the disruption in the gel, but that's just because it didn't tumble. You can tell it came in here, expanded, carried on through this first block, and it again is barely touching the face of that second block, so a full 16 inches, and that one definitely got some expansion. I don't know how much. It doesn't look like a whole lot, but it did get some expansion and do what it was supposed to do. And then again, as far as the penetration, no need to measure at all. I can plainly see right here, you got a couple of little bit of wispies coming off the front of that into this first block, maybe a 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch, but for all intents and purposes, you're looking at 16 inches of penetration from both of these. And here's your closer look again on the top 38 special, bottom 9mm. 38 special looks way more impressive only because of that tumbling, but as I always talk about with that tumbling, that is not a guarantee. So if it doesn't tumble, how far is it going? And you're getting very, very little disruption, but with that tumbling, it definitely does look pretty impressive. Same thing from the top here. You can't even see the 9mm right up underneath it just because of all that disruption from the tumbling. You can see both of them carry through the gel here. One of them expanding, one of them didn't. And if you look just on the other side, you can see a tiny little bit where it just barely peeked into that second block. All right, y'all, let's check out these projectiles. Nothing real exciting to look at here. Obviously, this is the 38 special and this is the 9mm. The 9mm kept a little pink piece with it, but it's falling out, so I'm gonna leave it right there for now. As you can see here, the 9mm definitely got some expansion, but not nearly what it could have gotten. You can see that cavity is still pretty deep in there, and you can see it didn't peel back real far. That being said, y'all know I don't really highly prioritize expansion, so that would be plenty for me. But the thing about it is, you would kind of expect more than that. Being a lighter projectile, it just wasn't moving fast enough, I guess. These critical defense, I'm not a huge fan of critical defense overall. It's not a bad round, but it never does anything that really impresses me. And then as far as the 38 special here, that's an absolute failure. I mean, you can see there was no attempted expansion on that, just absolutely none. It did tumble, so you got some nice disruption and it got nice penetration, so it would do the job if this what you had loaded up, and that's the kind of results you got, but it's just just, again, like I always complain about, it's just not what you're paying to get out of this thing. But let's get a few measurements on them and see what we got there. I don't think we got any kind of loss. This 38 Special started at 90 and it's actually at 90.2, so nothing at all lost there. And then your 9mm, I'm gonna weigh it with the pink piece because that's what it stayed with. It started at 100 and it's at 100.6, so nothing at all lost from either one of those. And then for your sizes here, obviously this 38 Special had no expansion. You got 355 on the base there with a length of 488, and then on the 9mm you got 431, 439, and 454. So definitely some expansion there, just not a whole lot, nothing to get real excited about if you're big on expansion. So there you go, y'all, the Hornady Critical Defense Lite in 38 Special and 9mm. Nothing real exciting out of either one of these here. The 9mm did a perfectly fine job, nice penetration, plenty of expansion if you ask me. A little bit low on the energy just because it's a light round, because you're giving up the weight to get the lighter recoil supposedly. And speaking of that, I know I didn't mention during the 9mm, but to me, you really can't tell much difference in this 9mm and regular stuff. I ran a few rounds of just FMJ just to make sure where my point of impact is before I came out here and did this, and it feels the same. I mean, I can't really tell much from the 9mm. The 38 Special now, it is very light. It's very light, but again, the 38 Special pretty much failed. So in my opinion, I don't know about these. I mean, if you can feel a difference in the 9mm yourself and you need that little bit of difference, I say go for it if you got them, but neither one of these are anything that I would go rushing out to find. All right, y'all, that's gonna do it for what was a pretty unimpressive first test of the day. I guess this is pretty much what I expected to see from these rounds out here. The 9mm, again, it did a perfectly fine job. That's about what you see from Critical Defense 9. It does the job, but nothing impressive. The 38 Special is what it is. It's one of those problem children, so I'm not very surprised at all that the speeds and that cloth just shut it down out here. So I've got a couple more things in mind for 38 Special short barrel so we can try to find us a few good ones. But let me know what y'all think about it. What do you think about the performance from these out here today? Do you carry either one of these? Do you carry them for the purpose of them being lighter and less recoil? And can you personally tell the difference between these lighter, light recoiling rounds and the standard rounds? Let me know down in the comments what your thoughts are. If you did enjoy the video, reach down and hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and make sure you got your notifications turned on so you get notified when I upload new stuff. Take a second if you're doing some shopping and check out those affiliate links in the video description. Anything you buy after hitting up those links down there, I get a kickback from them towards the channel, so I really appreciate that. Again, a big thanks to all my Range Gang members and every single one of y'all for supporting the channel. I've got a few more really interesting tests to do out here. Hopefully this wind stays calm down enough that I ain't a popsicle by the time I leave. Tons of really good stuff headed your way, so be on the lookout for it. And in the meantime, stay safe, stay prepared, and I'll see you soon.